Thank you. Go. What an amazing building. I could spend the next 5 minutes just talking about this place. I love the history of Leeds, and I love the way that this place came about, how the Corporation of Leeds spent £35,000. That was their initial budget. They raised a special tax. They employed an unknown East Yorkshire architect called Cuthbert Broderick to design this amazing classical Baroque building. He was recommended to them by Charles Barry, architect of the Houses of Parliament. I could talk about how rivalry with surrounding towns led them halfway through the design and build process to add a tower. How different could it have been? They bust the budget. It went from £35,000 to £125,000, some kind of cost overrun. But you can find out all that stuff for yourself, so I'm not going to talk about that tonight. I could talk about the year 1853, the year they started construction of this building. An amazing year, industrial strife. In Preston, cotton workers were locked out of their mills. They inspired work by Dickens and by Gaskell. It was a year of innovation. Queen Victoria was anaesthetised during the birth of her 8th child. Sir George Cayley's terrified butler took to the air in a flying machine near Scarborough and resigned the moment he crash-landed. But I don't want to talk about that either, because while the great and the good of Leeds were laying the foundation stones for this building, about a mile away in that direction, another community were doing something that I think is equally impressive, probably more amazing. The area known as the Bank on Richmond Hill was populated by a large Irish community. Weavers, people working in factories, construction. Many of them had come to this city in the 1840s as a result of Ireland's Great Famine. And the area was a slum. It was poorly drained. The housing was bad. Yet, in that place, the poor congregation, the Catholics of Richmond Hill, with their priests and with an order of nuns, built this massive cathedral-scale church called Mount St Mary's, which they called the Famine Church. It took about 4 years to build. During the construction, the building was struck by lightning and some of the workers were killed. The order of nuns nearly went bankrupt. Mine workings under the site meant they had to spend as much on the foundations as they did on the work above ground. The first architect for the church was a man called Joseph Hansom. He's famous as the inventor of the horse-drawn hansom cab. He then handed on to Edward Welby Pugin, the son of the interior designer of the Palace of Westminster. These people really knew what they were doing. In 1858, I think the year this building opened, John Ruskin came to Bradford and he asked them, why is it that you build Gothic churches and classical mills and mansions? This was more than a matter of taste to Ruskin, because he hated the prescriptiveness. He had no truck with this golden section and symmetry, and he thought that things should be practical. They should allow the freedom of the workman to have their reign, and Gothic, like Mount St Mary's, was the architectural style he championed. With classical, it's all big design up front. If you want to add a tower, you get a big cost overrun. At Mount St Mary's, the Gothic from Joseph Hansom was complemented by the additions by Edward Pugin very easily. Mount St Mary's was served its congregation for about 130 years. There are some lovely stories from people who remember it. I'm sure it wasn't always much fun, but amazing stories, a lot of memory. But it's been empty since 1989. It has English Heritage Grade 2 star listed status. That makes it the second most important kind of heritage asset in the UK. It's on English Heritage's at-risk register because it's falling down. There is a planning permission to preserve some of the more important parts of this building in a residential development, and I really hope that that comes off, because I think the differences between what's happening at Mount St Mary's and what's happening tonight in this town hall are instructive. 2 buildings, one classical, one Gothic, on different sides of the tracks, even though they began construction in the same year. One is the ultimate expression of civic power, the other one the faith of an immigrant community. I'm not Catholic, I'm not Irish, I was married here in the town hall, but I love the idea that so many births, marriages and deaths were celebrated, commemorated in both of those buildings. One of them has been well maintained through good times and bad in this city, and we're here in it today. The other one has been neglected for 24 years. So I think these two parallel stories of those two buildings should make us ask ourselves, what kind of city do we want this to be? And which of those stories do we want to remember? Thank you.